I first noticed it on a Thursday morning when I decided to clean out my backpack before class and found a small piece of folded notebook paper taped under the edge of my desk, the sticky Scotch tape yellowed and curling, and at first I thought it was a forgotten doodle from last semester or maybe one of my friends playing a joke, but when I unfolded it, my stomach dropped. It was a list, written neatly in small, precise handwriting, detailing my entire morning routine, from the exact time I leave my apartment to walk to the bus stop, the streets I take, the stops I make at the corner store for coffee, even which side of the street I cross at the crosswalk, and I flipped the page and the list continued with my schedule at school, including what classes I had, which bathroom I usually went to between periods, when I pull out my phone, the brand of laptop I use, even what I order from the cafeteria for lunch. Every movement of my day recorded with unnerving accuracy, and my hands started shaking because I'd never shown this schedule to anyone, not even my closest friends, and I started looking around the classroom, scanning the other desks, but no one was watching. Everything seemed normal, the teacher arranging papers at the front, students whispering quietly to each other, unaware of what I was holding, and I thought maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe I had absent-mindedly written it myself at some point and forgotten, until I saw on the bottom corner of the paper a small note in the same handwriting that said simply, "I know where you hide your keys," and I froze, feeling the blood drain from my face because I always keep my apartment keys in the small pocket of my backpack, and no one should know that, not even my roommates, and I suddenly remembered the other day someone had brushed past me in the hallway and smiled in a way that had felt a little off, and now I wondered if that had been them, testing me, seeing if I noticed, and I pulled my backpack closer, frantically checking the zippers, my phone, my wallet, anything that could have been accessed, but everything was there, untouched, except for the paper under my desk, which I tore off and stuffed in my bag without telling anyone, trying to convince myself I was overreacting, and that night I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with every detail of my day that could have been observed, every stranger I passed, every classmate who might have seen me from a distance, and I spent hours imagining the person watching, taking notes, knowing where I went and what I did, and I started noticing things at school I hadn't before, someone always sitting just out of my line of sight in the library when I study, a shadow lingering near the locker bank, the faintest scratching sound at my desk when I sit down, like someone had left a note or tool there recently, and I began checking under the desk every day before class. But after that first note, I never found anything else at first, and the fear that someone knew my every movement grew until I started switching classes, changing my route, leaving earlier or later, even changing my backpack pockets, trying to throw whoever it was off, but the paranoia clung to me like a shadow, because I couldn't explain how they had gotten so many details so accurately, and then one morning, after weeks of carefully monitoring myself and trying to stay calm, I sat down in class and saw a folded piece of paper protruding from beneath my chair. Again, and my heart thudded in my chest, hands clammy, because I hadn't touched the desk in days, I hadn't left anything there, and I realized whoever had been watching hadn't stopped, hadn't forgotten, and they might never stop, and from then on, every movement I made at school, every glance down the hallway, every time I picked up my bag or unlocked my locker, I did with the thought that someone was there, watching, noting, waiting for me to slip up, and even now, when I sit at home doing homework, I check my doors and windows more than I should, because the person who once knew my every routine could be anywhere, still patient, still recording, and all I can do is hope they lose interest before it's too late. It started on a Monday morning when I noticed the garden hose stretched across the driveway, wet along its length, the nozzle pointing toward the flower beds as if someone had been carefully watering them in the middle of the night. At first, I thought we'd simply forgotten to coil it properly, but my husband swore he had put it away, and the kids insisted they hadn't gone outside after dinner, so I tried to brush it off, assuming it was just a fluke, yet the next morning it happened again, the hose lying tangled in exactly the same way, damp soil leading from the side gate to the flower beds with no footprints anywhere else, and by the third day the pattern was undeniable. Every night, without fail, the hose would be out, sometimes stretched across the driveway, sometimes looping around the garage corner, always wet, always used, but nothing else disturbed, nothing stolen or broken, just evidence that someone had been sneaking onto our property while we slept. We set up motion. Activated lights and even a cheap camera pointing at the side gate, but the feed showed nothing except the occasional car passing the street, and yet the hose kept appearing, wet and tangled, so we tried staying up in shifts, listening for the faint hiss of water, the soft plop of droplets on leaves, and one night, around 2:15 a.m., I woke to that exact sound, careful, deliberate, like someone tiptoeing while they worked, and when I peeked through the blinds I saw a dark shape crouched near the hose, hands gripping the nozzle, spraying water across the flower beds with deliberate, patient movements as if performing some private ritual. I shouted, and the figure froze for a split second, then vanished into the shadows near the neighbor's fence, slipping away like it had rehearsed the retreat, and the next morning we found small footprints in the damp soil, adult-sized but uneven, cautious, leading from the side gate to the beds and back, and for the first time it hit me that this wasn't a prank or a mistake. Someone had been coming onto our property regularly, quietly, watching us, knowing exactly when we were asleep and when we weren't, and after that we installed motion sensor cameras, infrared lights, and even a motion-activated sprinkler that would turn on if anyone stepped near the side gate. But despite all of it, we kept hearing the faint hiss of water at night, soft and steady, and sometimes when I wake up to use the bathroom or get a glass of water, I swear I can see the faintest shadow by the fence, crouched low, disappearing as soon as I focus on it, and it doesn't matter how early we lock the doors or how bright the lights are, the hose keeps ending up stretched across the driveway at night, wet and pointing toward the flower beds, and every morning we wake to footprints that start at the gate and return again, proof that someone is silently moving around our yard when we're asleep, someone who has watched us for weeks, maybe months, and who knows exactly how to slip in and out without leaving more than the sound of water and the damp ground behind, and the thought that whoever it is might still be out there, waiting for the next night, watching us from the shadows, is unbearable, because we never see them, never catch them, but we always know they've been there. I work nights, usually 10 to 6, and I've gotten used to seeing the streets empty when I get home, the way the silence hangs differently than during the day. It started innocently enough, a dark sedan parked across the street from my apartment, headlights off, nothing obvious about it, just sitting there in the shadows when I got home around 6:30. I didn't think much of it at first. People park on the street. Maybe a neighbor had a late shift too. The next night it was there again. Same make, same color, same position, a few houses down but directly in my line of sight from my window. I chalked it up to coincidence and didn't mention it. But then it kept happening. Week after week, night after night, the same car waiting, sometimes idling with the engine quiet, sometimes dark, always the same. I started noticing small things. At first, I didn't want to admit it, but the driver's seat always seemed occupied when I passed by. A shadow. A figure. Too tall to be casual, sitting very still. Sometimes I'd be halfway down the block before I realized I was holding my breath. I began timing it. No matter what time I came home, early, late, 5 minutes later than usual, the car was there, waiting. I stopped going out for groceries in the evenings. I started locking my door earlier than usual. Once, I caught my reflection in the front window, and for a second, the shadow in the driver's seat shifted, just slightly, like the person had noticed me noticing them. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was someone stalking the street, a night guard of some kind, someone new to the neighborhood. But that didn't explain the way the car never moved, never left, never disappeared. One night I decided to confront it. I grabbed my keys and walked to the window slowly, pretending I was just heading out to check the mailbox. I tried to get a good look. The driver was there, but the window was tinted. I could see nothing, not a face, not hands on the wheel, just the silhouette of someone sitting unnaturally still, staring straight at my building. My chest tightened. I didn't breathe for a moment. Then the figure leaned slightly forward, like a nod, just the faintest motion, acknowledging me. I stumbled back from the window, heart hammering. That night I couldn't sleep. The next evening, the car was closer. Parked diagonally, headlights reflecting off my windows. I called the police, explained what I'd been seeing, but they said without more evidence, there was nothing they could do. I tried documenting it myself, photos from the window, timestamps, notes in my phone. Nothing changed the fact that every night, like clockwork, the same car returned. After a few weeks, I started noticing that the tires were always facing toward my apartment, like whoever was in it was prepared to drive off immediately if I left the house. I stopped leaving the curtains open. I stopped opening my blinds at night. The car never left. And sometimes, just before I drift off to sleep, I think I can see headlights flicker in the distance, and I swear the car is moving just enough to keep me in sight.